Lecture 14, The Fourth Leadership Mantra. Let me tell you a story. Part 1. This is the 14th lecture of the leadership course. In this lecture, we will discuss the fourth leadership mantra. Let me tell you a story, which is the final lecture on the topic of storytelling. I will introduce 3 special ways of storytelling. It's important to note that there is an ellipsis after the phrase, "Let me tell you a story," which serves as a reminder to tell a story. All leadership mantras are meant to prompt action. This mantra reminds you to tell a story, but you can also simply tell a story without saying the phrase. In fact, you can tell a story without even speaking. I want to emphasize that a leadership story only needs 2 elements, imagery and distance. You don't necessarily have to use words to tell a story. The most skilled and effective storytellers often don't use words. The 3 special ways of storytelling that I will discuss in this lecture are all nonverbal. 1.3 Special Ways of Storytelling. Before discussing the 3 special ways of storytelling, I want to mention a viewpoint from leadership scholar John Kotter. I previously mentioned Kotter when discussing the difference between leadership and management. He is one of the most famous leadership scholars. As I mentioned before, Kotter emphasizes that leadership is about change. However, I didn't mention that Kotter later proposed a viewpoint. He said that many people believe effective change involves 3 steps: analysis, thinking, and change. The first step is analysis, the second is thinking, and the third is change. Leaders guide people through analysis, which leads to thinking, and once people have thought things through, change occurs. Kotter believes that this analysis-thinking-change model is an outdated model for change and is not very effective. He says that a more effective model is to witness, feel, and change. You let people witness something, then feel the emotional impact, and finally change occurs. Witness, feel, and change are the 3 steps in Kotter's new model for change. Based on this new model for change, Kotter wrote a book called Heart of Change. Have you noticed that the word heart, in Heart of Change, is a pun? It means that this is the core of change, but it also means that you need to touch people's hearts and emotions to bring about change. Kotter's analysis-thinking change is what I call logical persuasion, and his witness-feel change is what I call storytelling. Traditional storytelling can be described as listen-feel change, which is also 3 steps. Kotter transformed it into witness-feel change, where witnessing involves seeing with your eyes, which is more vivid than listening with your ears, and often closer in distance, thus more emotionally impactful. Kotter's new model for change is indeed innovative. However, I want to point out that Kotter's approach is not perfect. Storytelling is not limited to witnessing. In fact, there are examples that are more emotionally impactful than witnessing, such as experiencing. I can upgrade Kotter's witness-feel change to experience-feel change. We now have 3 storytelling models. The first is verbal storytelling, which is listen-feel change. The other 2 models, Kotter's witness-feel change and my experience-feel change, are both nonverbal. Now I can tell you the 3 special ways of storytelling. The first is prop storytelling, which falls under witness-feel change. The second is ritual storytelling, and the third is action storytelling, both of which fall under experience-feel change. 2. Prop storytelling. Let me start with prop storytelling. I'll give you an example from my personal experience. In 2011, I attended the annual leadership forum at Harvard Business School, which included a segment where each person had to use an object to tell a story about their values. We were informed of this segment beforehand and asked to bring an object. We were divided into small groups, and each group had to present their stories to the others. A representative from the group next to me stood up. His name was Kyle Snook, and he was from West Point Military Academy. He had served as a platoon leader in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is considered the front line for the United States. Snook stood up, holding a boot in his hand. He said, "In Afghanistan I have this value. I won't ask my subordinates to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself. So, when we were on patrol, I often walked at the front of the line. Here, I'll interrupt Snook's story. Can you tell that Snook is applying one of the leadership mantras I mentioned before? Which one is it? That's right, it's "I'll go," which is a more specific form of "Follow me." Snook continued. That day, while we were on patrol, I was walking at the front of the line, wearing this boot on my right foot, and stepped on a landmine. When I heard this part, I was shocked. The boot played a significant role in Snook's story. What role do you think the boot played? Let me give you a hint. What are the two elements of a leadership story? You should remember that one is imagery, and the other is distance. Snook used the boot as a prop, which not only made his story more vivid but also brought his story closer to the audience. The story originally took place in distant Afghanistan, but this boot, which we could reach out and touch, made it feel like Afghanistan was right in front of us. This is the first special way of storytelling. It's not just about telling a story with your mouth, but also using a prop that is closely related to your story to make it more vivid and closer to the audience, thus more emotionally impactful. By the way, which of the 4 types of leadership stories does Snook's story belong to? I think you can tell that it's "Who I Am" story.